Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today we will be creating a simple Christmas card. This card can also be a lovely occasion card just by changing out the sentiment and the North Star. So let's take a look at the supplies that we're going to use today. We'll start out by using a multifarious smooth and supreme cardstock. I have the 7x7 inch that I have cut down to 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 inches for creating our art on. Then we will use a piece of cardstock to create a frame, and that will be cut to 5 inches by 5 inches. And then we will use another piece of cardstock to create our card base. This one has been cut to 10.5 inches by 5 1/4 inches. For our stamps today, we are going to use the Lavinia Fairy Fir Tree, the large one. This one is LAV 478. Then we will use the Fairy Fir Tree 2, the small one. This one is LAV 492S. We'll be using the Lavinia North Star. This is LAV 707. For our stamping, we'll be using the Diversifying Clear Nocturne ink. And for our colors, our background, we are going to be using Distress inks. We will be using the Rustic Wilderness, the Peeled Paint, the Salty Ocean, and the Chipped Sapphire. We will also go ahead and use the Lavinia masking sheets. This is the A4. This will be what we will use to mask out where our North Star is. We will be making an aperture, using an aperture to create a nice little stenciled area that we're going to be blending our colors with. What I used is actually a very old stencil that I've had. This has probably been around for 30 years. But the great thing is that with this design, you can use anything you have on hand. You could use, like, this is a Sweet Poppy stencil. If you just mask out where your snowflakes are, you can then use the aperture on the inside, the square. Any shape is fine. You can use the circle, you can use a square, you can use a heart, any shape that you like at all. And also, for a really fluid and kind of, I guess what you'd say, looks like a torn look, just take some torn paper. What I did was I just took 4 pieces of paper, cut them and taped them together the size of the aperture that I wanted. This way it's just kind of an organic, flowing looking outline for your project. We will also be using just our blending brushes to blend our colors with. When we go to put our card together, we will use a running tape, or we can use a clear glue. You can use the Ultra Bond adhesive or any glue that you have that you like to use. I will also be using my stamping platform and for stamping my designs. So let's get started on our project. So we're going to start out by taking our 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 size art card. Now I like to, when I'm doing blending with stencils, I like to go ahead and tack my card down so that it doesn't shift while I'm doing that. So I'll take a little piece of painter's tape, or you can use the Sweet Poppy low tack tape. I'll put just a little piece behind it so that I can stick it down to my work surface so that it doesn't move around a whole lot. And then we're going to take our stencil. I'll just go ahead and use the same one that I used to create this particular card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center my stencil on my card. And then again, because I like the stability and I don't trust myself to keep it in place by just holding it, I go ahead and tape that down as well. Now, if you feel like you might be a little messy, like sometimes I feel like I might be a little bit messy, and I might get outside the edges of my square, you can cover up your edges so that you don't get color on the white. I'm going to do that just because I'd rather err on the side of caution. All right. So now we're ready to start blending our colors in the center as soon as we put in our North Star. Because what we want to do is we want the background to be white for the North Star. So what I'm going to do is I actually keep my scrap pieces from my masking sheets for small projects, something like this. So I'm just going to take my North Star and I'm just going to stamp it onto the paper side of my masking paper. The masking paper comes with this paper side, and then it has a plastic side. That's where you peel off the stencil when you're ready to use it. So now what I'll do is I will cut out this star and we will place it here. I went ahead and did one ahead of time so you wouldn't have to sit here and watch me cut it out. So here is my little star. And when you cut it out, it doesn't have to be precise on your stamp with this particular item, just as close as you can. Obviously you want it to look like the North Star. So now we're just going to peel off that plastic background, and sometimes it's a little hard to grab a hold of. There we go. Peel that off. Throw away that little piece, and then we are going to stick this down where we'd like it to be. I'm trying not to get it crooked. Might be slightly crooked. Let's see if we can straighten it up just a little bit. There we go. So now I've got my North Star down, and we can begin the blending process. So what I've done, as you can see, is just done a little graduation of colors starting at the bottom and then moving up. So I'm going to take the Rustic Wilderness first. And I'm just going to put a little bit of it down here at the very bottom. Alright, then I'm going to move on to just a slightly lighter color. I think in my first one I may have actually used the sage color, but I'm going to go ahead and try it with the peeled paint this time just to see what it looks like. Obviously this one we want to be just a little bit of a shade lighter than the first layer that we put. So again, I'm just going to gently blend that. Across there. If you feel you want a little bit more contrast, then just go ahead and go back in and add a little bit more once you do that one. Get it a little bit darker if you'd like, so that you can really see the contrast. Okay, so then we will move on to the salty ocean. And again, we'll just do that same process where we're just going to softly blend in some blue. And then we'll go for our final color, which is going to be our chipped sapphire. So what I'm doing is I'm blending it a little bit lightly to start out with, because I do want it to get darker as it gets to the top. So I'm just going to put it down a little bit lighter to start out with. And then now I'm going at the top to go deeper and press harder so that I can put more ink on there so I can get a darker look at the very top. Alright. Sorry, I think my table squeaks a little bit as I do the blending part. And then I'm going to try and get it really dark at the very, very top. Alright, so now you've got your sky and your ground with those little graduated layers building up. So now we can go ahead and remove our stencil. And we can remove our mask that we created of our North Star. There we go. Alright, so now we would like to go ahead and get a kind of a little look of stars in the sky. So I'm actually going to cover up my grass portion. And then I'm going to just take my Distress spray bottle here. And I'm just going to lightly spritz and let it sit for just a moment so that we can get some star effect when we dry it off. You can either use a paper towel or a rag. I'm going to go ahead and use a rag. My paper towels have a little bit of a texture to them. And I've found that sometimes when I do that, I get the texture of the paper towel. And I actually got a little bit of a blob there at the top that I'm not terribly happy with. So I'm just going to place this back on and do just a touch up, if I can, with a little bit of the chipped sapphire. So maybe it won't show up quite as much. That's just me. I think I sometimes go overboard when I want to do the perfection part. Okay. So now that we have got our background done, we can start doing our stamping. So to do our stamping, I'm going to go ahead and get out my stamping platform. I can remove the tape off the back where I had this stuck down to my work surface. And now I'm going to lay my card down. I use a sticky grid base on my stamping platform, so I don't have to use magnets. I don't like using the magnets very much, so I usually like to have that sticky background. I don't want my sticky background to get any ink on it if possible, so I'm just going to put a little piece down here on the bottom to keep the bottom of my tree portions from getting down on the sticky grid. Okay, so let's go ahead and start out with our larger tree first. I'm actually going to trying to decide. I used a different tree. When I did the original one. So I think what I want to do, this one's a little bit taller, so I'm actually going to mask off just a little bit of the top part there too, and then I can adjust that. So that one I will then have there, and when we go to stamp this one, it will be next to it. I'm going to scoot it over just a little bit. Alright, I think I've got my layout how I want it. And we will press that down. I'm going to move this paper out of the way. And now we will get my VersaFine Clair Nocturne. And ink up my stamp. And let's do our stamp. Press down to make sure that it's making full contact. Yeah, that's a nice impression. And I like to, if I can, go ahead and clean off my stamp as soon as I can afterwards. I usually just use a little baby wipe. Just kind of wipe it down to help it keep it from staining, the stamp from staining up too much. So now we are ready for our small tree. So I'm going to put it right about there. I like it to be outside the frame. I think that gives it a little bit of unique look to it. And we're going to do the same thing. We will ink up our stamp. close the platform door. All right, that's nice. So let me clean off my stamp real. Whoops, sorry about that. Clean off my stamp real fast. And we will be ready for our final stamp with our sentiment. Now you can decide whether you want that to be inside of your color area, your background area, or you can have that also go over the edge. We'll go ahead and do it over the edge just to see how that looks. Make sure I've got it straight. Ink that up real quick. And as I said before, if you don't want to make this a Christmas card, you can always use a different sentiment. And then you can use it for any occasion. All right. That really looks lovely that way. All right. Now, since I did kind of cut the top off of that tree, it was a little bit taller than I thought it would be. So I'm just going to take a black fine tip pen, and I'm just going to kind of turn that top into just a little bit more of a finished tip. All right. And that is basically all there is to this card. It's a nice, simple, easy card to do, a quick one to do. And I love the effect of the gradation on the colors. And now we are ready to mount it on our frame and onto our card. Set that platform aside and grab our frame and our card base. So we will now take this. I'm just going to go ahead and use the running tape. That goes a little bit faster, especially when we're demonstrating. You know what? There's something I wanted to do first. So let me do something really quick first that I like to do. As you can see on this one, I like just a little bit of an edge around it, a distress edge. And the way that I do that is I take my chip sapphire and grab a little dauber here. Just ink that dauber up just a little bit. And then basically I'm just going to lightly brush it along the edges. It just gives it a slight little distress look, and it kind of also gives it a kind of a frame, draws the eye towards the center of your design. All I'm really doing is just kind of flicking it along the edge of it. So you get a little bit of a shadowing, and then you get that little bit of a darker line that it creates on the edge. And you can make this as wide or as thin as you like. If you like it to have a bigger distressed border, then just go a little bit further in. All right, there we go. Oops. So my head may come in the way. I'm going to lean over just a little bit so I can make sure I'm getting this centered. All right, so now we've got that centered on our frame. And we will do the same thing with our card base. Alright, and again, my head could come into camera frame. If it does, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that I'm getting it as centered as I can. Alright, and there is our finished card. So as you can see, it doesn't take very long to do this project, and it's a very basic one. So especially if you're trying to create a whole bunch of cards at one time, this is a really good quick technique to use. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I hope you enjoy making this simple card with a kind of stenciled aperture. And remember to check out the DellBellosDesigns.com website for more tutorials on the design team page. Have a great day.